Cool. Good morning, guys and gals. I'm told I only have 20 minutes to talk today, and those who know me know I like to talk a lot. So I'm going to try to get through this. My title is actually now called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, since I realized that I'm going to be one or the second speaker today. And I kind of want to use this talk to be more of a meta talk, as opposed to a talk that talks about technical stuff around KPIs, analytics, algorithms. Given that there might be people in this room who have varying levels of experience, maybe this is your first season working in a club or working for an analytics organization, or it could be your 10th season. So maybe it's good reminders for people who are veterans, and maybe it's good reminders for myself and for those starting on this journey. So I'd like to take our conversation first to Naples. Great people have come before us, whether that's in football, whether that's in making phenomenal margarita pizza. Obviously, this image that you see here is famously from Italy, from Naples. But before pizza was sort of famously associated to Italy, I'm pretty sure people have been making flatbread and putting toppings on top of it for quite some time, even before the Roman Empire, which is quite similar to football. I think we associate association rules football to England, but probably people have been kicking things with their feet for a long time before England decided to put some rules around it. The reason I say that is because for many things that have become staples for humanity, people have always been trying to find innovations. People have always been trying to find new ways of doing things. People have always been trying to also create controversy. So this guy, one day, I think his name is Sam, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, a Greek immigrant, was living in Canada, 1962, so many, many thousands of years after the first pizza was made in Naples, or maybe not thousands, I don't know. He put some canned pineapple with some ham on top of pizza. And people liked it in Canada, but it created a lot of controversy sort of in the original circle, could you say, of where pizza was created in Italy. I live in Italy now, and if I tell a friend or a colleague that, I've dabbled in having a slice or two, they look at me as if, like, man, you've committed bestemmia. If people know Italian, bestemmia means swearing, or it means blasphemy. But the reason I start the talk like this is because it blew my mind that pizza is actually currently a $197 billion market as of 2023. And so even if I was super generous and I decided to just attribute 1% of total pizzas in the world as the 197, that's 1.97 billion. So even 1% is a huge chunk of change regarding the pizza market. So 1.97 billion players, probably the 13 most expensive transfers in the history of football. So the reason I say this is that 1% is actually not a small thing. And to bring this back to data, 1% of total decisions made in a football organization, even if only 1% of them was influenced by data, you're still making a huge impact. You're still driving influence. You're still making something significant. I say that because not every decision that's going to be made, whether it's in the transfer market, whether it's going to be week-to-week match preparation, sports science, human performance, not every decision might be made on data. It might be made on emotion. It might be made due to politics. It might be made due to things outside of our control. So 1% is still quite good. And the crazy thing is that, people recognize 1% of 197 billion is $1.97 billion. So even Italians, pizziolos in Naples, they've recognized this, and they're like, okay, I'm going to experiment putting a pineapple on pizza. So you can go to Italy, you can go to Milan or Naples, and start finding pineapple on pizza. Not many people will admit that they've tried it, I think, but it's now an offering that they have on the menu. Very similar to maybe what you might see with a football club, traditional director, traditional owner, maybe traditional coach. They might come around at some point when they realize that 1% of data's help on the total decision space of a football club or organization might amount to 3 million, 30 million, 15 million. It piques the eyebrow. It piques the interest. So your day is most likely going to be filled with a lot of pineapples. There's going to be a lot of talks today, a lot of research papers, a lot of panels, a lot of people who are ridiculously smart. And you're going to hear some cool ideas, people working on some cool algorithms, maybe to try to identify most optimal pass, maybe to identify most optimal decision, maybe to identify synergies between players. How do we correctly address which player is going to fit into a system, given that they're coming from a system that your team doesn't play in? You're going to see a lot of pineapples today. All I ask is just keep calm, chill. If you feel like the imposter syndrome might be triggered a little bit, it's okay. Because we can always go back to the basics. We can always go back to dough, water, yeast, tomato sauce, cheese, basil, which is where I'd like to talk about the giants of the football analytics industry. These are some metrics which maybe you could swap out for your own, but these are some metrics which I think are kind of universally known to everyone in the room. These are some metrics that are even included in the StatsBomb product already. And these are metrics that come from great people before us. I think Ian Graham is in the room today. Will might be, I don't know. But they created their own expected possession value years ago. And then Javier Fernandez at Barcelona built upon that. So, I consider them giants. Laurie Shaw from Manchester City, he built some models around how to estimate formations using tracking data. I consider him a giant, Defensive activity sometimes doesn't always have to come off of the back of a research paper. StatsBomb out-of-the-box IQ just provides you some good, simple defensive metrics. I consider that a giant. And so sometimes you don't have to experiment with what toppings you're going to put on your pizza. You can just say, look, I have some basic ingredients. I know that these ingredients have good flavor, easy to digest, very important. And if I just get the right combination and permutation of using these to tell a story about my team, about a certain player, about how the season is going, you're going to drive success. Because we are data scientists, we are data analysts, we are working with data, but we're not in the data industry. We are in the football industry. So the key decision makers in our industry, they are not coming from technical backgrounds like we do. So we should always look to speak to the lowest common denominator of the room or the industry, which would be maybe an ex-player, maybe it's an ex-coach, maybe it's a current coach, maybe it's someone who studied to be a sporting director through a sporting director program. I think University of Manchester has a really good sporting director program that some of my friends have taken. They didn't study data, they didn't study mathematics. So speaking to the lowest common denominator always helps, and finding metrics like this are helpful. So XG tells us a story of who might have been able to win the game. Expected possession value takes it one step further of why XG might not always be a good predictor of who won the game. And we go back from in possession to out of possession metrics. So I would say the juice is worth the squeeze. I think this is what I was saying, is that we might already be working with such simple metrics, but I will always urge people, or I will always believe that we can squeeze more juice out of the metrics that are quite simple or quite universally known to us. And that's always not coming from the fact that we can push boundaries. We can obviously be pushing boundaries on how to see the game better, on how to analyze the game better, but it always comes down to who is the one making the final decision and what is their comfort level, what is their understanding of mathematics, numbers, data, everything. So taste buds don't lie, and neither should data. So I'm a big believer in this image that you see. If there's anything that you take away from today's talk, it's probably this, is that I believe that everyone that we work with in a football club, or most people, are quite intelligent. So the CEO of Atalanta, the coach, Gasparini, our sporting director, Tony, they're very, very intelligent people. And they have their own personal Rubik's Cube in their head of many different dimensions that they need to be thinking about before they make a decision. So in the market, maybe it's something about contract length, maybe it's something about the agent, maybe it's something about transfer fee, many different things that they have to work through. And I believe data, or like my role, is just to help them perhaps solve their Rubik's Cube better until we can get to a point of being more prescriptive. But even beyond prescriptive, until we can get to a point where we can have trust in allowing data to be more prescriptive. So two different things. We can maybe have the prescriptive algorithm, but maybe we also need the step of the entire brain trust of an organization coming together to agree that, yeah, let's actually use a prescriptive algorithm to make a decision. Until that day comes for your organization, for your club, I always find that helping people solve their own personal Rubik's Cube is important. So Switching to the second half of the talk, you're now reliable. You tell good stories with data using XG, with OBV or expected possession value, with maybe some defensive metrics. Maybe now you want to find your own sort of niche, or you want to find your own metric that is important for you. I would just suggest, always make sure that you're having fun. It sounds dumb to say, but I think it's really key. Working in football can be very stressful. You go through peaks and troughs. It's very competitive. One day you've not won a game in 2-3 weeks, and everything is now in panic mode. It's important to always find your smile. And I like Carlos Alcaraz. I love tennis a lot. And he says here before he made it to the semis of Wimbledon, he says, wearing a smile on my face, that's the key to everything. I believe the same, and I think Ronaldinho and Saka would agree. So. It's very stressful, the work that we do, the industry that we work in. I think it's really important to kind of listen to these people who are really freaking good at what they do. So let's just go through maybe a pineapple idea. I love tennis a lot. I'm always thinking about the difference between tennis and football, how we can maybe merge the two together. This is some research that was done by Stephanie Kovalchik. I hope I pronounced her name right. I believe she's working at Zealous at the moment. And she was looking at this concept of Federer, actually, Roger Federer. He spoke in his graduation speech saying, or not his graduation speech, Dartmouth's graduation speech. He was saying that he only won 54% of his points. So, an all-time great like him, out of all the points he's played in his life, he's only won 54% of them. Which means tennis is not a game of always being at your top level at all times. Tennis is a game of just playing at a baseline level, at a good enough level, and then raising your level at the most critical moments. So I always think about this in context of football because I'm just wondering, how do we define what are the most critical moments within a football match? How do we define if a player is clutch? Some people just think, okay, the clutch player is the person that comes on, scores the goal, like a traditional plus-minus model in that regard. But maybe clutch could be defined in other ways of, a player is able to create something against the run of play. Maybe, the other team is dominating possession, the other team is dominating EPV, but still there's a player team that can make a change and do something. That's very similar to maybe Ademola Lookman in the final against Bayer Leverkusen, who was probably the favorite to win that match against us. So, one way we could maybe define clutch using, again, giants in the space. This is work from Javier Fernandez, who was at Barcelona, now at Zealous. He tries to build effectively a model to try to understand what is the safest pass option that minimizes risk of losing possession, what are the optimal pass options, and what's the most rewarding pass options, and then what's the optimal pass option giving the delta between minimizing risk and maximizing reward. So this is one way that we might be able to define clutch, because we could maybe use this metric and identify all the moments that players, like this player makes 95% of very clutch or very green angle passes, always maximizing reward and minimizing risk. But as you can see, the sort of text above doesn't look like mathematics because there's not many numbers there. It's more letters than numbers. And maybe not all of us understand how to maybe build this yourself, or not many people understand how to actually create this sort of model yourself. And that's okay. There's always maybe a simpler solution or a more creative solution that we can come up to. So everyone maybe could be familiar with FootMob, and FootMob has always a graph that has this momentum of trying to estimate, who is having control of the game at a certain time. And so if I had to create analogies between football and tennis, perhaps you could use a momentum graph, which is, again, standing on the shoulder of a giant using a metric that's already been created. And you could say, break points are super important. If Roger Federer didn't have as good of a career as he could have if he converted, because he couldn't convert as many break points. So again, for me, that's analogous to someone who's very good at being able to create something against the run of play. The other team is dominating for a long time. Maybe someone on your team creates something, wins the ball back, makes a really good progressive action, maybe makes a really great dribble, good shot, and is able to create something out of nothing. Or the other is, who are the players that actually shift, the laser doesn't work, but who are the players that actually shift the inflection point between where black goes to blue or blue goes to black? That could also be a very interesting moment to understand, that's a clutch action because because we've been getting dominated, the other opponent has been controlling the game, but now we can have control ourselves, and who are the players that are actually driving that change. So I got 2 more slides. I'd like to say that being the data person or starting out as the data person within an organization is very similar to being an academy prospect. You might be an academy prospect in a football club. Everyone might, believe that you have potential. Everyone might believe that, this player can potentially one day play in the first team, make the transition to the first team. And because of that, they allow the academy player to be in the locker room, to have lunch with the players, to train with the players, to start to integrate the person slowly before the match day. So everything that's happening in the training week, this academy prospect is constantly getting integrated. And that's kind of how I felt being the data guy was in Benfica, and to an extent the first year maybe in Atalanta as well, when you're building trust with new people, especially in a different country. And so when this academy prospect gets minutes, whether it's in a match or whether it's in a cup match, it's all about maximizing those minutes. And so to go back to what I think, you might have some good algorithms, some very nice, fancy, predictive, prescriptive algorithms that work. But again, we're in the football industry working with coaches, sporting directors, owners who might not have the same level of numerical technical capacity that we might have. So it's all about trying to find those simple metrics that are universally understood and then maximize your minutes when you're called upon. So I think of it as maybe not just an academy prospect, but a super sub. It's good being a super sub. We had a fantastic super sub, Luis Muriel, for many, many years. I think he actually has the most goals in Serie A coming off the bench. And he's played a very phenomenal role in Atalanta's recent success in terms of getting into Champions League, in terms of making progressions into cups. And, it's okay. He's not a starter, but he comes on, he gets the job done, and that's okay too, The data person most likely is not the highest paid person in the organization. So if we're not listened to all the time, or if our algorithm isn't listened to all the time, that's okay. Maybe ask for a raise or change job. So the last one, my last slide is, I think everyone knows this meme, that Real Madrid is known as Friendship FC. I'm a big fan of Carlo Ancelotti. He has a book called Quiet Leadership, which I think is a phenomenal book for anyone to read about how to be sort of in control of a room, but just be an active listener as opposed to trying to always be right. And you can see, again, a lot of more smiles. Hopefully my presentation today has the most smiles. My X smile is maybe the best. I don't know. But this is super important to me because I think the strength of bonds that we create in conferences like this, maybe we get to see old friends, maybe we get to make new friends. Maybe yesterday I was at a get-together with some people. There was a Brazilian person in the room. There was a German person in the room. We had known each other for like 4 or 5 years. We'd known of each other for some time. And it was only yesterday that we found out that all 3 of us could actually speak Portuguese together. So maybe there's people that you know in this room today that you might not know actually as well as you'd like to. Or maybe you might find another connection or a thread of similarity that helps create a stronger bond. And when we have stronger bonds, we have stronger trust. And when we have stronger trust, we can succeed together. And when we fail together, it's okay. We don't point fingers because football is very competitive and there will be moments of distress. There will be moments that are difficult. It's all about being able to manage those moments well. And perhaps Carlo knows a thing or two about that and we can draw some influence on that instead of just thinking about how amazing of a tactician he is or how amazing of a football brain he is, similar to maybe us in the room who are phenomenal at data, phenomenal at numbers, mathematics, algorithms. Perhaps it's the soft skill of friendship that also plays an important part. Thank you, guys. I hope this was actually a helpful talk. I can't really speak much about what we do at Atalanta, but I thought maybe this was a good reminder to everyone in the room. Thank you to Statsbomb. Congratulations to Ted and the team at Hudl. Enjoy the day.